Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of When I Grow Up. On today's episode, I feel honored and privileged to have my friend Eny Lee Parker with us. Hey Eny, how are you?
Hi Claire, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for giving me your time today to tell me more about what you do. And before you do, I just want to give a quick intro. If you are familiar with the design world, I feel like these days Eny Lee Parker is probably a household name, and she's probably like cringing just me saying that. But you know, the little I know about that world, I know that in the last 4 or 5 years, you've truly developed a company where it's like, yeah, it's an extremely well-known name and well-known pieces, like furniture pieces. And oh, yes, I should mention, Eny is here because she is a furniture designer in New York City. And I'm excited to tell you guys more about this career because I feel like it's definitely a career that not a lot of people think about, but I would even go as far as to say not a lot of Asian Americans think about the world of fashion, or not fashion, excuse me, furniture design. But before we get into that, I'm sorry, Eny, I just want to tell people more about you. But on a personal note, I think I've known Eny. Actually, I've known, so my husband David is, yeah, I mean, practically Eny and David are cousins, I would even say.
Like I taught him, or like my first like quote unquote real job, not real job really, but David's mom, David's mom, basically asked me to come over and babysit William and David when they were like so young. I was like 13 years old.
Uh-huh.
13, and just like teaching David, because David is I keep going back and forth from David and David, but he was really good at drawing, and I would come over and like teach him, I guess, how to make lines and circles. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. So you've always been like artistic then, and you've always like been good at drawing and things like that?
Because I wasn't good at school work, like actually studying. So my mom always encouraged me to like go towards something that I enjoyed, which was, when I was little, it was like drawing and painting and being artsy, I guess.
Um,
So yeah.
That's amazing. So, okay, yeah. I mean, to go back to that story, if you didn't know, David was born and raised in Brazil, and Eny was also born and raised in Brazil. So they're both Korean Brazilian. And so that's what she's referring to. When they were younger in Brazil, she would go over and babysit, I guess. But I did not know that story. That's so funny.
I mean, like it's not quite babysitting because they were like older, but
Yeah.
I think David's mom was trying to be nice and like create something for me to do,
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
we also had a pool, which was really fun. Yeah, I have like snippets of
Yeah. And then later, when did you move to the States again?
when I was 13. I think like shortly after that, I moved to.
Okay. Yeah, and then later David actually went to LA for like a year to live there when he was in middle
And he was,
school. And
yeah,
he lived with you, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
only eat beef. Or no, not beef. Yeah, bulgogi or like samgyeopsal or something like that. There was a specific thing that he would only eat.
David did?
Yeah.
I believe it.
I don't remember if it's between like pork or beef, one of the two.
That's so funny. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, and I remember I mean, I've never told you this, Any, but like, I've been together with David exactly 10 years, like this year. And I
Uh,
think that's around the time I met you in Savannah.
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, and I know it's so crazy, but I just want to say like the first time I met you, you were the most like hospitable and the sweetest person. I was kind of like nervous because you're like one of David's older sister type, friends, and I was meeting um I'm David's first girlfriend and only, but but like, and I was meeting you for the first time and I was really nervous, but you were so sweet. And then I remember like, even at my wedding, like you just were so like kind to think about me, and like what you kept asking me, is there anything I need? And it was just really a memorable time between you and I for me. And I just, all that to say, I'm excited that you're here.
I'm really glad. I'm really happy that you got to come to Savannah too, and that's like where we met. And you have like
Yeah.
memories from that because like I was in college and probably like an idiot, but I'm
No.
glad that you have good positive memories.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was so fun. But enough of my tangent here. Let's get into what we're really here about. So Eny is like I mentioned earlier, a furniture designer. And yeah, what does that even mean, Eny? What does a furniture designer do?
So it would make sense more if I explain like how I got into it. I studied interior design and I worked in residential interior design and really enjoyed more of like the furniture, like picking out furniture or just like thinking about it and like redesigning it in my head. So that's really how I got into. You don't hear a lot of people say like furniture design, but I think the type of furniture that the world that I live in, it's not necessarily designing for um, like bigger brands like West Elm, IKEA, and all of that. It's more artistic furniture. So it's a pretty good community of people who love to be creative, and it really blurred the lines between art and design. So art and furniture. So that's kind of like the world that I live in,
Mm.
and it's very explorational. It's very small in terms of like the community, and we get to like mess around a lot with different materials. It's really fun. I really enjoy it.
So how did you get into like that type of like particular unique area of furniture design? Like, so not like, the big brand names like you mentioned West Elm or IKEA, but how did you get into this like niche group of designers?
um, well, so like my training when I was doing my master's in furniture design, really what like they trained us to learn how to design and build furniture, and a lot of times some of the classes were basically designing for those brands like Design Within Reach, West Elm. Like they would have Emeco, like they would have like big brands, and you would learn how that whole process goes. But I also really enjoyed looking through like design platforms like magazines, Architectural Digest, the Zine, Wallpaper Magazine. There were like all these different design platforms that or blogs that I would look through, and one of them was Sight and Scene, and Sight and Scene showcases a lot of like young, fresh designers, independent, small studios, and a lot of them like are in New York. And I just kind of like got more involved in applying for opportunities, and I luckily got into some of those opportunities and started coming to New York through the school every year for Design Month. That's like in May, Design Week, and just like met a lot of creatives like when I was in college, and eventually, like long story short, kind of became a business while I was in school because I would post about my work online on Instagram, and people started thinking that I was actually like a business, and they would inquire about it, and I would just kind of fake it, pretend that it was a business. And yeah, so that kind of evolved into actually like more demand, and me having to think like how I need to you know supply those products to them. And then just kind of, I don't have a business model and nothing is like really clear. It's pretty new. It's like it's been 3 years and I'm learning as I go, but it just kind of naturally organically became a business.
Wait. So you're saying that you didn't even graduate from grad school yet. By the way, you went to SCAD, correct?
No, I graduated. I was in grad school for so long because I was working like a couple of retail jobs at the same time. My partner and I, we were paying kind of out of pocket, but I also had like a half scholarship because he worked for the school. But it took me like 4 years for me to get my master's. But while I was doing my master's, I would post about my projects that I was doing in school.
That's incredible. And then people like it piqued people's interest because of the things you're posting. And they were
Um,
like, "How much is it?"
Kind of, a little more, um, I got luckier than that. I would often curate my, because I'm a very visual person, love to curate my pieces, and I would just like post
Oh.
them. And then eventually got into this artist residency and, created a collection for that artist residency. It involves ceramics. And the right person saw it and invited me to participate in a gallery show or like a trade show called Set and Scene Offsite, and it was in New York. And I was a and the people who started Set and Scene, they didn't know that I was in school. I didn't tell them either. And usually you have to pay to, participate in those things. And I just didn't have the money and I was still in school. So they found me. I got really lucky. They found me a sponsor. At the time, it was the brand Levi's, and they paid for my space. They sponsored, it was like a whole thing. And from that trade show, it didn't click with me that people were gonna come look at the pieces and ask how much it was, and I would have to like provide that answer. So that's kind of really like how it started, but it was like through like people finding my Instagram and that page looking like it was a business, and it kind of opened a couple of doors, and they were the right doors because right soon after that, the trade show, I got a lot of press, um, and one of them was with New York Times Style Magazine, and that was like we're really like it's almost like if you get like an article with the New York Style Magazine, T Magazine, um, it's kind of like it legitimizes you, even though I was like, I'm not real, or my business is not real. Um, on the outside world, like when people are looking in, they think that you're a business.
Sure. Wow, that is incredible. I had no idea.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like no one tells me anything, but like, I mean, obviously I follow you on Instagram and social media, and I just felt like you were just booming overnight, and like getting all this press and stuff. And I remember looking to David and being like, "Did you see this? Like, did you see how incredible this piece of furniture is?" To him. And for us, it's like you're just any, but then all of a sudden it's like you're not just creative and talented any, you're like majorly like a renowned designer any, and I'm like, did you see she was in Vogue magazine? Like, but I mean, that story is like, yeah, I mean, you mentioned a couple times that you got lucky and there were some open doors, but there's no doubt in my mind that it was more than luck and it truly was your talent, Annie. It's really awesome. Could you take me through like a typical day for you? Like, what is a day in the life of a business owner that creates these pieces look like?
It's a little more boring than you think. Um, I sleep a lot. Like I was telling you earlier, I go to bed like around 9:30, and it's not because I wake up early either. I like literally wake up at like 7:30, but lounge around bed until 8. And I get to the studio at like maybe 9:30. And then just like usually on my computer, I have two kind of like a studio manager and a production guy. My partner is also like Carson, my husband, has been coming working with me. So it's like four of us. Um, and I running a business is a lot of administrative work, which I just recently hired somebody to help me with it, but I'm still like spending a lot of time on my computer.
Mm.
So I usually like try to clean up, like tidy up the studio before I get to work, like before I start my day. It just helps me get like a little more settled. But my production assistant, he's really the one who's like hands-on building everything. And I'm just making invoices, emailing people, working on some new designs. There's been a lot of collaboration like projects lately, so I've been like focusing on those. I I feel like I'm like the mom in the studio, so I'm out constantly cleaning after people. Like I'm like sweeping a lot, doing the dishes, like honestly like making coffee for people. um so yeah, and then I end the day and come back home, make dinner, watch some TV, and go to bed, honestly. That's nothing luxurious.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of work, honestly, to be able to do what you do. I mean, you make it, I think you like don't give yourself enough credit, honestly, but I'm curious
Oh,
to,
yeah, I mean, we do work weekends too.
oh,
I
geez,
like
really?
yeah, I mean, we also travel a lot, so, like, we try to go to places a lot, so, like, to running a business, like, you're constantly working, it's not real,
Yeah,
you know? But, yeah, we work on the weekends too. At least, like, Carson and I, my assistants don't know.
I see.
Yeah.
So definitely owning a business is 24/7, literally. But, um, you know, uh, oh, can we tell people kind of the medium that you use for your furniture pieces?
So I got into clay, so, like, I for some reason thought that, like, ceramics would be a great medium for furniture at the time, and I didn't know anything about clay. So I just, like, really taught myself, like, watching a lot of YouTube videos and, like, asking a lot of questions to people who knew about clay. And I also work with a lot of local vendors around me, which I think is really important for my business. And, like, on my ethos and goals of the business, I try to work with, like, good people. So we work with a woman-owned lighting vendor. They wire all our lamps, and then I work with two small family-owned upholstery companies. We also work with, like, I mean, glass vendors that, like, and ceramic comes from New Jersey. So it's, like, all, like, very, like, we stay, like, nearby. Um, so we, like, I design with different materials, but, like, in the studio, we work with ceramics.
Mm. So how did you choose this medium?
I went to Korea, and I remember my aunt kind of like, she's an embroidery artist, like traditional artist, and she like lives in a really old town and took me to this like little fair, and there were people selling like old ceramics, and I just like got this like teapot, and it was so like beautiful, and I really like loved like the texture, the material, and got to like mess with like around ceramics like when I came back, and was like, whoa, this is so fun and therapeutic, and just like something that I've never done before.
Wow, that's awesome. So you got inspired from your trip to Korea?
Hmm.
That's really cool. How do
Yeah.
you get your other like where does your other inspiration come from to make the pieces that you make? Like the lamps, I know that you're really well known for your lamps and things like that. Where do you get these ideas? They just like come to you or do you draw from something else?
um Usually like I like to like travel quite a bit, like go to a lot of like galleries and museums. I love looking at historical methods of like fabrication. So like just like learning about how people used to make certain things, or that's always really nice. And then I also like will look at like an old book and see something and then create a concept from that. So it differs. Like I remember making concepts out of like the movement suprematism, or like recently, like I did a whole collection based on watercolor drawings of like, how do I explain it? Like body parts, like the cells in our organisms, like cells, cells or cells. um, so it's like very specific things to like very vague things. It like, it's different.
Mm. Wow, that's man, I'm just gonna be honest, like I think the way your brain works is so like abstract and different than me that I'm like so like fascinated with
Yeah,
all
that's
of
the
it.
thing about music people. I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
You're not, because like my friend says that he can see sounds, and I'm like,
What?
what? I don't
That's
get it.
insane. That's
Yeah.
so crazy. Oh my gosh. Okay, so if we back up a little bit in your story, you had mentioned before that you started as an interior designer, and that's
Mhm.
what you studied in college. But even before that, like you said, when you were 13, you were already drawing and exploring your creative side, and your mom kind of pushed you in that direction. But I'm wondering, like, at what point, like, were you like, hey, I'm gonna pursue like this in college and so on and so on?
Um, I mean, I got lucky that my mom was smart about how she raised me. So she didn't like really force things that I was not good at. And when I was little, like I was not good at studying, like I couldn't pay attention. I wasn't like smart or anything. And she just saw that I was like more inclined towards like being a little more creative and always kind of, push me like, hey, like, why don't you try learning how to draw and doing this? And in high school, I kind of got like really into art and was in like this, I was in public school in California, but they had this program where all the subjects that you study would involve art in some way. And I started like kind of getting a little more like into making a portfolio to apply for schools because like my mom and I like we didn't grow up with money at all. Like I grew up with a single mom and she worked multiple jobs a lot and we didn't have any savings. Like we didn't I mean, I wasn't properly documented for a long time. So I really relied on being able to like have a portfolio and apply for scholarships for college if I wanted to go to college. Um, so like it kind of started in that area where my mom put me through a portfolio school after like
Oh, wow.
like when you like hagwon, I don't know,
Yeah.
um like if you go like I would go to high school regular hours, but I had zero period, and then after high school I would go to like this portfolio school at 1 o'clock, and then my mom would pick me up at like 7 or 8. So like I had like 8 hours every day from like sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, but it was like so much fun. Like it was just like kind of, it was a bunch of like art kids like painting and drawing and talking all day. And I loved that she saw like something that I was good at and she encouraged it. And I was at first like an illustration kind of oriented, like I was painting a lot of things. And I was painting a lot of like interior spaces for my drawings or whatever. And my portfolio teacher saw that and he was like, why don't you try interior design? Like, there's more money in that. So I was like, sure. I'm like pretty easygoing. Like, I'm not like very like, this is exactly what I want to do. Like, I don't have that.
Mm.
I just like want to be happy and have good friends. So, and I look more in terms of like as like a an individual how I can grow rather than like constantly just thinking like, oh, how do I grow my career?
Mm.
So I was like, sure, and did interior design, applied for schools, got scholarship, did that, worked in residential design, didn't love it. So I had to pivot a little bit. And
Why didn't you love it? What, like, you thought you would love it, or you were just going with the flow, or?
it was going with the flow, but I think it was because it was a little slow for me.
Mm.
Um, I loved my boss. My boss was incredible. I learned so much from her, but I just like it was just kind of tedious.
Mm.
Like, and it was a lot more like about I also didn't like having to work with like married couples, like a wife and a husband, and them fighting about what kind of curtains they want and like
Oh, interesting.
things like that. It's just like, wasn't necessarily for me. Um, and there's so many components in interior design. You really have to be thinking about like, oh, so much details.
Mm.
So you have to administratively be really good at like being organized in some ways. Um, and I didn't wasn't that person.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
So
mean, so at what point in your career of interior design were you like, I need to change, I need to shift things around here?
it wasn't like that. I just like wasn't it was, and it was also really hard, year for me. Like I was living in Atlanta actually, and I was living in Midtown. My husband was working for our school, so we were living in the school. in the dorms.
Oh, which by the way, I had great memories there too when we would come visit you.
Oh yeah. But those years were like probably the hardest
Oh
for me
man.
in my like married life.
Mm,
Just because we had just gotten married, I had just graduated school, like we were so young. We were like 23, like we didn't know
yeah.
what was going on. Out of a sudden you're like out of college, or you're an adult and you're married. That's like, hectic.
Yeah.
So it was really tough. I just like wasn't happy, and I think that really added to like me not liking my like what I was doing. I didn't feel like I had ownership to it. Um and it just like kind of naturally was like, well, like I really enjoy picking furniture. I enjoy looking at furniture and like analyzing it, and really like judging like what makes a piece of furniture good.
Mm.
So that kind of like made me like think like maybe I can get my master's. And like I first tried to get my master's in interior design, but I was like, I'm just like learning the same thing. So like, so I specified it into furniture and fell in love with it. It was like perfect for me.
That's amazing. So, okay, so I'm curious, like, when you're mastering in furniture, what types of classes are you taking? Like, you mentioned like you liked seeing a good piece of furniture, Like I don't know
Um,
what is the definition of a good piece of furniture?
oh, I mean, I can't answer that
Yeah.
anymore. It's different for everybody. But you asked like what a class of furniture.
Oh, I meant like what kind of classes do you take?
Oh yeah, yeah. So like some of my first like classes were like shop. You have to like pass shop in order to use the shop, because we're dealing with like really large like you know table saws and like bandsaw and routers, and just like really a lot of dangerous like equipment that you can like literally cut your fingers off or your hair. And there's horrible stories.
Oh gosh.
We would make like a shaker's table through the shop, and then I took like introduction to metals and like learning how to weld, how to
Oh
mill metal,
wow.
how to like forge and all of that. You take like a plastics class, you take history of furniture, you take complementary design or something, which was like very I was in grad study, so like a lot of the classes were very like slightly philosophical, but like about design. So like some of the stuff is like talking about like how there's a book called Cheap, and it talks about the psychology of like how we buy things and forget about them, and like what makes a piece of furniture valuable or not.
Mm.
Another book is like called Emotional Design. So it talks about like how we feel towards certain products or how they make us feel. Is there importance to that? Yeah, there's like a lot of things. I
That's
know it
no, I
sounds
mean all
very
of it is
crazy, but it's like really fun.
no, yeah, no, all of it sounds really fun because again, I say these in the same comment in like across all of my podcasts, like just things I just never think about, because my eyes are not open to it. But now that you're talking about it, I just feel like I'm gonna look at furniture differently.
Yeah,
But
it's really good. People don't think about it, but furniture is like you're living in an environment, and especially through COVID, like I feel like you're home like a lot. And I'm a very like my mood and my um efficiency runs based on like my environment.
mm,
Things have to be clean, things have to be like organized, the lighting has to be warm. It's just there's all this stuff that like it helps me like feel a little more comfortable
mhm,
or
mhm.
get in the zone. And I don't know, I think there's something really nice about being intentional with the surroundings. I mean, that's me.
No, I think that what you're saying resonates well with everybody because I think people don't realize it. I think you're just very self-aware to it and tuned to it because I mean, it is your job too, but I think when you go like when you go into a nice coffee shop and you're like, "Okay, like this is the atmosphere I like. I can
Yeah,
study here or I can hang out here with my friends as opposed to going to somewhere that's not as pretty or not as well lit or so definitely I think a lot of people feel that way, but it's just you're unaware, of what it is that you're feeling at that moment. But Annie, do you have like a piece of, I don't know whether maybe you're in grad school or even currently, like that you've made a piece of furniture and you were like, this is it, like, or like kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I get what you're trying to say. Um, the first piece of furniture that I've ever designed and built
Uh-huh.
was a chair,
Uh-huh.
which is very stereotypical. Like furniture designers always start with utensils and chairs. It's like our favorite things to design. Um, but the chair that I designed was for a wood bending class. So,
Okay.
uh, which there are a lot of methods to bend wood. I think now you're going to look at your pieces of furniture and be like, oh, I wonder if that is a bent wood piece rather than, I mean, there's like, I can like give you a whole lecture about it, but that's kind of boring. Anyway, so the chair that I had designed, I thought that because wood comes or paper comes from wood, that wood could be bent like paper.
Uh-huh.
In my head, I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh, like, so a lot of my models were out of paper. And I eventually like designed this chair that has a compound curve to it. And if you understand a little bit about wood, is that wood has like a one directional grain. And that means that it's easier to bend a one way instead of two ways because it has like one directional grain. I don't know if this is like making
No,
sense.
this is so fascinating to me, Annie. I love it. Keep going. I love it.
So because I had designed a chair that bend in two different directions, that's called a compound curve. It's so much more complicated, like nearly like it's not impossible, obviously, with the technology we have, but with how I was going about it, I was so naive in how to make that piece. I thought that, oh, like, no big deal. Like, I could just do this. And my professor, he was so sweet because he never said, oh, that's too hard or, oh, that's impossible. He was just encouraging, like, okay, try, maybe try this and try that. And I feel like that mentality, like, without giving any limitations was so healthy for me because I worked my ass off on that project. I think that I gave like 110, like 200% of myself into a project that I've never felt that way before. I've never felt like I've put so much effort into a project where I could look back and be like, oh, like I could have done more, or I could have I like in that project, I didn't feel that at all. I like look back and be like, wow, like I really gave my all and I couldn't have done any more than I
That's
had done.
crazy. And but you did it, is what you're trying to tell me.
Yeah, I did it. I still have it. And it's just like one of those like feelings. It's not necessarily about like the way it looks, but it's the way that like I fell in love with furniture with the
Wow.
process of feeling like I gave my all and I couldn't have done more to it.
Yeah.
And that
That's like extremely powerful, I feel like.
Yeah, like I know you don't have that often. Like you can always look back and be like, I could have done this part better. You know what I mean? But for this one particular project, and I don't think I can think of anything else other than that project that I felt that way
Mm.
again. Hopefully, like I will, um, again, eventually in the future. But that's really hard to do.
I mean, yeah, I feel like you conceptualize something and then you were like, I'm gonna make it happen. But then, what you're trying to explain to me too is that you didn't realize how difficult it was at the start of it.
Oh yeah, if I with the knowledge that I have now about wood bending, if I like thought of a compound curve or that specific design, I would tell myself that's too hard.
I see, I see.
Like I think sometimes the more you know about certain things, you'll automatically starts putting guide rails
Yeah.
um, onto, yourself, and then it limits a little bit your process of designing.
Yeah, I mean, ignorance is bliss for real, I feel like.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious, just talking about this chair. So like, is part of the difficulty in the way the wood grain goes in one direction, like if you try to bend it the other way, does it like splinter or like what happens?
Yeah, you have it like could crack, right? So like this chair in particular, I steamed it a
You
lot. Like,
steamed it.
so with wood bending, one of the big like, ways of like bending wood is either using a lot of veneers,
Okay. What's a
and
veneer?
a veneer is a really thinly cut wood.
Okay, okay.
So a lot of your pieces of furniture might have a veneer, might not be completely solid wood, right? It might be like an MDF layer and then the veneer glued on top to make
Okay,
it look
okay.
like a solid wood.
I see, I see.
Um, that's the kind of stuff you're gonna find like at IKEA all the time. There's no such thing as solid wood at IKEA. Or
Is that why sometimes it like bends in the middle? Like if it
no,
gets
wood can do that. Like that has to do more with the density of the wood, if there's moisture, if it's been properly dried
Oh,
off. Um, but yeah, it's different. It depends.
okay.
But with the project that I did, usually like if you want to bend just like one curve, like if I wanted to make like a little belly, like a little round, it's just bending one direction, right? So if I just put a lot of like a layer of veneer, a wood veneer, and then I put glue, another veneer, another glue, and just keep going, and then you put it against like a mold, you press it against the mold and you put it inside a gigantic plastic vacuum. And what the vacuum does is suck all the air out, and all that wood compresses towards the mold, and it glues over 24 hours and it stays in that shape. So that's like one process. But because my piece has a compound curve, I had to steam the crap out of those like veneers. I like And I use Italian bending plywood, which is like, engineered to like kind of bend easier. But I steamed a lot before prior to putting onto the vacuum.
That's crazy. I have to go check out this chair now.
Yeah, it's like really complicated. Like I feel like the more I can talk about it, it's not gonna make sense.
No,
But
it makes sense to me. I get what you're
okay, that's
saying.
good. Yeah, and also like I had to make the positive mold where the wood goes against, but because there's two parts of the chair and they're mirrored to each other,
Uh-huh.
I had to make two molds that were completely identical but mirrored, and I had to carve that by hand. So that was like another trick that was kind of hard to do,
Oh
but
my goodness. So like, I mean, do you put all like I hesitate to ask this question, but like I mean, that's a lot of work into one chair, right? So like your pieces, they're very large ceramic pieces. Am I wrong in saying that or they're
no,
pretty large, right?
yeah, I mean, we have different sizes, but
Okay. Okay, but I mean like um you know, how do you like mass produce furniture? Like how do
I'm
you
not that. That's not my business model, though.
Okay.
It depends on the business model, like, and I'll just go ahead and say it, like, I am not my market. I'm not out there trying to buy a $3,000 to $4,000 lamp. Um, that's not where I am financially. Um, but that's how much my lamps cost.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, so like how much so like what is the turnaround then? Like someone is it like you order and then you build it or
Yeah, it's a made to order business.
Oh,
So we're a
wow.
small studio, like all the things that we make, it's very low risk too, because we're not paying vendors to like build 100 lamps and then having to pay upfront.
Yeah.
That's not the business model. It's
Yeah.
more like art-based furniture. So like, a client is interested, they contact, we work through it, create an invoice. It's made to order. It takes about 3 to 4 or two, two is eight. Yeah, 2 to 3 months to make a piece of furniture.
Okay.
And they're usually like at a higher price point than like your normal, yeah.
Yes. It is at a higher price point. But I mean, I think a well-deserved higher price point for the amount of work that goes into it, I'm sure. Um
Any
any
piece of furniture that like costs like over $200,000. That's like art studio furniture. That's like a whole nother world. But
Yeah, I can't even wrap my head around that.
yeah, me neither. I'm like, I would rather buy a house,
Oh,
but
no, girl, you're gonna Eny Lee Parker Incorporated coming to you.
do that. Yeah, we're good where we are now.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Any what do you, like, love about what you do right now currently?
I love that I get to prove what immigrants can do.
Wow. Okay.
I just absolutely I don't like take it's really hard for anybody to take pride in their designs. That's not me either. Like I get tired of things very quickly.
Mm,
But the one thing that I will forever have so much like pride in is the fact that I mean, I was under the Dream Act when I came when I was little. I was like
mm,
under, I was underage and didn't have proper documentation. Grew up with a single mom. She put me through college. I mean, with a lot of support of our friends as well, like my mom's friends, Davi's mom, huge support. And I just like love that I get to prove that all of that worked. Good community, supportive community worked. And I didn't steal anybody's job.
mm.
I like made myself a job, made a couple of other jobs for my team, and I get to like put in 20 to $30,000 every month towards other businesses that I love. A female owns like, business, like family oriented businesses. Like I love that I get to participate in the economy, the local economy. And that's like my why I love small businesses, because we support each other. And I feel like that's to me like the biggest dream that I could have
That's
come to
amazing. Yeah,
reality.
I mean, I got the chills as you were talking about that because, um, man, like the platform that you've created, for yourself and the way that you're using everything, everything that was invested into you to be where you are today, I think it like speaks volumes, Any. And I'm like so like in awe of it all, I think it's so great. And it's not to boast again, not to boast about you or your work or whatever, but I just feel like, the work that you put in, you don't just sit with it, you actually do something about it and do more with it. And I think that in itself is just really inspirational. That's great. That's amazing. Yeah. Now for the real question, what don't you like about your job? Is there something that is challenging or something you just could do without? I mean, you mentioned before, like kind of the administrative stuff you don't really like, but you got to do it to live and stuff. But what is there anything else?
Um, I don't love, I mean, this is so bad to say, 'cause but I don't love press. Sometimes I feel like having to like do if it's like emails, like if we have press inquiries and like they have like questions for us to like fill out for like press. It's just like sometimes I start feeling a little phony. So
Mm,
that's maybe like not my favorite. Unless it's like an interview, like a phone interview or something that like it's a conversation, I feel like it's a little better.
sure, yeah.
But yeah, like administrative stuff, like I love like getting to email clients and talking about the work and stuff, but it kind of like takes a lot of time
Sure, yeah.
places and keep up. Yeah, that's it.
Well, thanks for your honesty and your transparency
Yeah.
in that question. Um, uh, well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Was there anything else you wanted to share with people that maybe I didn't mention yet or bring up?
I think we talked a little bit about luck, right? I sincerely do think that I got lucky, but there is such thing as like I think that the more doors you knock, the
Mm.
more chances of you getting lucky, you know? Does that make sense? I feel
Yeah,
like you don't just sit around and get lucky. Like
right.
you should be able to like do the work, like in terms of like meeting people and asking questions and like not being embarrassed to like try things and fail, or like to post about your projects. And I have so many friends that started their businesses on giving themselves like a daily task. So I have like a friend who made a mug, a ceramic mug every day, like a different mug, and posted about it and like created a huge business on it. And I have another friend who would do the same thing, but in the illustration. She would do a lot of illustrations every day. And Alex Proba is now like a, pretty big, like she does like from murals for Google to like Nike, and like she does like rugs and products and so many collaborations. So like people who aren't afraid of like just trying things out. I have this thing where I always say, like, the toilet paper, you get it wet and throw it on the ceiling and it sticks. So like just doing that and see if it sticks, just like throw it against the ceiling and see what happens. And I feel like we're in an age that we can do that. We can knock a lot of doors, we can meet new people, we can be bold. Um, because I think that it's accessible for us to do that. So do it, and then like the more you do it, again, the more chances that you might get lucky.
Yeah, I mean, like, I love what you said. I think for me, like, just hearing this advice and applying it to my own life, there is this like fear of failure for myself. And what, like, but you were saying, how do you know you're going to fail if you don't try? And,
And I think that comes with age. You
mm-hmm,
remember how I was telling you, like, the more I know about a material, the more I would know about wood bending, the more guidelines I put in myself. I think the older we get, we know a little too much about the world and how we think the world works.
mm-hmm.
So we start putting these like fears on us, right? Like of not wanting to try them out because we're scared of the failure. But like I feel like when you're young, you don't know enough, you're kind of naive. So like you're so much bolder and you're like trying, you're like you remember when you first went to college, or like when you first like went someplace, it was so easy for you to like try to make friends and like talk and like be out there. So I think that the whole thing, the fear of failing, is it really does sometimes come from age. And I really hope that like, I do that a lot too. But it's important for us to like keep ourselves like out there, I think.
Yeah, and I think just kind of remember that what's the worst thing that could happen? Like people say no, or you know what I mean? Like, or it
Yeah.
just doesn't work out. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Especially in my field, I am constantly saying like unless something is like tipping over a child, which is terrible to say, but it's not like life and death. Like I'm not a doctor. I'm not out there saving lives, like
No,
making.
yeah, you're right. You're
So,
right.
you know,
Yeah,
I
yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's funny that you say that. I used to, when I was working in production too, I remember I was doing a live production and something went wrong, like on the televised live production. And I was like, oh my, and just my personality is just like a perfectionist kind of. And I was like, oh my gosh, like acting like the world was going to end. And then this more experienced guy, my engineer that was helping me, was like, Blair, like, look, we're not saving lives here. Like, it's just TV. But yeah, that's so true. It's like it's like, you're not a doctor.
yeah, that's what I say a lot to myself when I
Yeah,
make
that's a great reminder, even for myself.
not life and death.
Yes, that's
Live life.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, before we end our time together, Eny, thank you for that awesome advice. I feel like that's something that's going to sit with people, and in their hearts. But do you have any advice for somebody that maybe is interested in uh, majoring in college in the arts or interior design or even furniture? Do you have any advice for them?
I would say either learn how to document your work really well, or become friends with people in photography or something if you're in product, in the product world. Just because like I think sharing your work online, number one, is free. Number two is the audience is endless. it's the internet. And number three, when you apply for jobs or when you're trying to start things out, I kid you not, we look through those. We look through your social media. We look through just like seeing how you kind of like represent yourself if you're in social media. I feel like that's like an important tool. Like I know the social media can be really negative and bad, but if you use it for your benefit, it can really start something incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how you got started too.
Yeah,
So,
that's how a lot of people
yeah.
get started.
I mean, what a incredible day and age that we live in that that's even possible, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Eny, thank you so much again. I really appreciate your time today. I learned so much about the world of furniture and even just wood bending and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, would you mind if somebody was like maybe interested in asking some questions, could I maybe get in touch with you and direct them your way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I
guys,
might
if
be a little
you
slow on emails, but I will do my best to get back to people as quick as I can.
no worries.
I'm like a turtle when it comes to administrative work.
well, well, if any worst case, if you enjoyed this episode or you are interested in learning more about what Eny does or just even this world, I'm sure you could just Google it, honestly, and a ton of resources would come up. But if you're interested in some sort of like, connection or just real life happenings, feel free to DM us, DM me and I'll get you in touch with Eny the best way that I can. Or you can email me because I'm not flooded with emails. So just feel free to email me at podcastwigu, wigu at gmail.com. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening. Until next time, bye.